Hello everybody, welcome along to this video, which is Mr. Johnson Teaches Eric Berling Revision, part of the series of videos that I'm putting together for an Inspector Calls, recapping and revising all the key elements and key characters from the play in order to try and support you as you get ready for your GCSE exams. So a quick reminder then that you'll find an Inspector Calls as part of paper 2 on your literature, and it's part of section A. It comes before you do the 2 poetry sections, and a reminder that you'll be given a choice of 2 questions and you just choose the one which you like the look of most. But unlike the first lit paper, there'll be no extracts at all, so it's completely up to you to provide any evidence that you want to use for this. As we go through this video, please make sure you've got pen and paper ready. Always really important that you are making your own notes for revision. The more notes that you make, the more you've got to look back at and more to revise from as you move forward to your final exams. So, without further ado, let's do a quick recap then. So who exactly is Eric Berling? Well, in simple terms, he's the son of Arthur Berling and Sybil Berling. That's Mr. and Mrs. Berling in the play. And he's the brother to Sheila. He's been working in his father's business, we find out throughout the course of the play. We don't know exactly what. We get the impression that maybe he is going to one day perhaps take over. The stage directions describe him as half shy, half assertive. So to be shy is to sort of keep yourself to yourself and be a bit nervous, whereas assertive is to put yourself forward. And those are two very much in juxtaposition with each other. So in some ways it almost shows this mixed character that Eric is. Not completely confident, but at the same time not afraid to put forward his views. Certainly what you can say about Eric is he definitely drinks too much. We get that impression right from the start where he's celebrating the engagement of Sheila. His parents don't seem to notice this, however. Somehow it's escaped them, almost like they're living in their own bubble, and they're sort of very much naive towards the fact that he is started to drink too much. He slept with Eva Smith, so this is his link to the girl then, and she then became pregnant. She refused money. He then started stealing money to try and support her because he didn't have much his own money to access easily, so he started stealing from his dad's business. She refused to take that money when she found out that it was stolen. So what about him in the play then? And the key question, of course, is does he change like a lot of the characters do, or some don't? So he starts the play at the family meal, as we've said, the engagement of Sheila and Gerald. He seems to have maybe been drinking too much. And as the inspector enters, generally he starts agreeing with the inspector. When there are points made about the sacking of the girl and Eva Smith particularly, he shows this sympathy towards her, which his father really doesn't like very much. And then later on he disappears without any warning. It almost seems like he knows that the questions are going to start coming his way from the inspector and he gets himself out of there. So he disappears relatively early on in the play, and then he reappears later on at the dramatic moment when it's just been revealed that his mum refused charity to the girl, and then it becomes clear that the baby she was about to have is Eric's. Then we've said already that he stole money. It reveals that from the father's business to support her. He becomes incredibly angry, and understandably so, when he discovers that his mum refused to help the girl when she went to her for charity, and then he accuses her of almost killing her own grandchild, which, no, she didn't directly, but in some ways you can see the link he's talking about there. And by the end of the play, it's really key, he does show remorse and like guilt and feelings for his actions. Like even when the inspector's identity is called into question and they're not sure whether he was an inspector or not, he still recognises this is Eric. He still recognises they all behaved terribly towards the girl, or even a girl. Even if it wasn't the same girl, he still knows that he behaved badly towards the girl that he knew. So some key quotes then. You don't need to remember all of these. You're never going to remember all of these quotes. If you can remember a word or two from a quote like this, then you're doing really well. And you really want to just try and have a selection from the beginning, maybe the middle and the end, to try and show how characters do or don't change. So here's some of the quotes of Eric that I've picked out then. The very beginning is the one at the top there from the beginning of the play. He could have kept her on instead of throwing her out. He's talking about her dad firing Eva Smith. I call it tough luck. Already what you've got there is Eric maybe showing some sympathy towards the girls and the workers, which you may not expect him to do as his father is the employer trying to make money, but Eric instantly is showing that sympathy. Beneath that, again, a very similar idea. Why shouldn't they try for higher wages? We try for the highest possible prices. Again, talking about the business. So the business tries to make as much money. Why shouldn't the workers? And then he goes on to say, I'd have let her stay, once again showing that sympathy. You're not the kind of father a chap could go to. Now, this is right towards the end of the play, because there's a very big gap in the middle of the play for Eric. That instantly shows the relationship between him and his dad. And then this is when the inspector's gone, the rest of these quotes, and they're really good because they reflect Eric's change and Eric's sort of understanding of it doesn't matter whether she was real or not. Our actions were the thing that matter. So for God's sake, what does it matter now when they give you a knighthood or not? He says. So again, showing that it's not about titles, it's actually about being a good human being. He was our police inspector, all right. He was the one who inspected us and made us look into ourselves, is what he's doing. He's being very reflective there as a character. You're beginning to pretend that nothing's really happened at all. So this is showing the difference between the older and the younger generations, how he's critical towards his parents and the way they're reacting towards the inspector perhaps not being real. At the very end of that quote, it says, this girl's still dead, isn't she? And you lot may be letting yourselves out nicely, but I can't. Once again, sort of going along that similar pattern of not allowing himself to take no responsibility. He still feels the guilt and the remorse. And finally, again, a really good quote for separating capitalism and socialism. It's too simple just to say that Eric is socialist. He isn't. He's grown up in a capitalist family. His father is a business owner. He will probably go on to try and earn money himself, but he does show socialist sympathies, you could say. Like when he says, the money's not the important thing, it's what happened to the girl and what we all did to her that matters. He is therefore taking responsibility and is changing, and that is one of the key messages of this play by J.B. Priestley. So what does he represent then? All the characters in the play stand for something and capture something in society. For me, I'd say that Eric is certainly representative of upper class young men. He's going to follow in his father's footsteps and take over from the business one day. We get that impression. So that's what he represents. But he represents the younger generation, much like his sister does as well. And both of those two characters show willingness to change and open their minds and see what they've done wrong and see that something needs to be different in the future, which gives hope for the future, perhaps. And also, I've put at the bottom there, he always captures this idea of remorse, guilt, and responsibility. So, which themes could you link him with? These are by no means the only themes. They are certainly some of the key themes of the play. Power, in the sense of he doesn't seem to have much power, but maybe he seems to sort of grow as well. Certainly representing the younger generation and him taking responsibility for his actions. He's certainly happy to. Remorse, he certainly shows that a lot. Class as well, the difference between class, but again, he's the one who seems to sort of break down that class barrier a bit like his sister does. And the other ones I think I've gone through a little bit there as well, but certainly ones you could try and find links to. And therefore, what next? Possible exam questions. So you will be given a choice of exam questions. You'll be given a choice of two. Sometimes they name a character and sometimes they don't. One of the questions which has come up in May 2018 was, how far does Priestley present Eric as a character who changes his attitudes towards himself and others in the play? Now that's a really good question because Eric does change. Although he doesn't change dramatically, he doesn't go from sounding really capitalist to sounding really socialist. He sort of develops this sympathy for the girl and really distances himself from his parents and his parents' beliefs and attitudes. So that's something you could look at using some of the quotes on the slide I showed you earlier. Another question which isn't directly about Eric naming him, but you could link to Eric, and you'd be absolutely fine to do that. How does Priestley present selfishness and its effects? So actually you could look at how some characters, like Mr. Burling, are selfish and are only interested in themselves, where other characters, like Eric, show more sympathy, and you could contrast two characters as part of that answer, and Eric could make a really good one to contrast with his father. And finally, at the bottom there, the second one under suggestions has got brackets SAM1, sample assessment material. So it wasn't ever an actual exam question, but AQA, the exam board, did produce this as a question. The differences between the older and younger generations, that's very similar to what I was just talking about with Mr. Burling and Eric. And a question I've made up, how does Priestley use Eric to show the importance of responsibility? Hopefully you could see how you might go about answering that one, how important it is for us to look at and take responsibility for our own actions because they have consequences for others, which is one of Priestley's key messages in this play. So finally then, some quick recap questions. Test yourself on these and have a go at writing these down. So just some questions which will ask you to go back through some of the information about Eric and things I've talked to you about in this video. And that is what brings this video to an end. So thanks very much for watching it to this point. Do check out the other videos on the channel, target your revision on the characters you need to know about and feel that you're weaker at, and check out other videos as I said on my channel. I wish you the very best of luck when it comes to your exams. Thanks very much for watching. Goodbye.